Hey, everybody. I think we're going to give it a minute or so before jumping in as people continue to join, but we will also record this session and share it. If any of your colleagues are not able to attend or you want to look back at anything. All right, folks are still joining fast and furious, but I think we'll jump in here and kick things off. We have a big crowd. It's great to see. Hopefully, a lot of you will be at Sun in a few weeks too. We can get a chance to meet in person there. But for quick introductions here before we begin, my name is Charlie. I lead the SyteLine business development team here at Nimbello, and I'll be walking you through a brief overview of Nimbello and the product. And on the call with me as well as my technical counterpart, Geraldine Christner. She will be leading us through a demonstration. Don't worry, it will be a bulk of the call, so I won't take up too much of the time here. But as you can see, it's a little bit untraditional in terms of a quote-unquote webinar, but we like to keep these, interactive and chat with some of the folks that are able to attend. Feel free to, we'll save a few minutes at the end here for question and answers, but throughout the demo, feel free to take advantage of the chat. I have some colleagues from Nimbello's side who will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in there. And as Geraldine and I are going through this, they'll be able to point out or call out anything that we may miss with regard to questions. But even as we get into things here, we could start off. This is obviously focused around SyteLine specifically. If you guys all want to just let us know, which are you on-prem or cloud-based? Some typical objections that you're having with AP, anything like that, just feel free to drop it in the chat. It will allow us to obviously cater this conversation a little bit more to everyone's general issues or obstacles, and we could continue to go from there. But yeah, absolutely take advantage of the chat, keep things interactive. We don't want to just bore you and talk at you this whole time. Hopefully this will be helpful. So what we'll be chatting about today, as I mentioned, I'll give you a brief overview of everything so you can conceptualize what Geraldine's going to show you shortly here. I'll talk a little bit about some of the changes that we've seen for AP for our SyteLine users and how our product has been addressing that. Some real world use cases, and then of course we'll jump over into the demo. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll save some time for questions. I think as I was actually seeing registrations come in over the past few days, I noticed some familiar names, so it's good to see some of you back here. Hopefully we can continue those discussions, and maybe if AP automation's on the docket for this year, we can certainly continue to push forward there. But a little bit about Nimbello here. So we've been around for almost 20 years at this point. And from day one, we have been focused primarily and only on automating PO-based invoices. We also handle non-PO, but the real point here is that AP is all we do. We don't really tend to get into the AR side of things too much. We've just built a product, perfected a product, and really tried to help all of our customers specifically around AP automation. So as we got into the space and we built this product out in the very beginning, we started working with our customers pretty closely on their specific needs that they would want with an AP automation tool. And as such, over the years and throughout all of the changes and mods that we've put into the platform, we've noticed that our primary audience that we fit for is really a more complex style of an industry. So we work a ton within the manufacturing space. I would say over 70, maybe 80% of our customers these days are within the manufacturing space. And as such, we organically found ourselves working a lot with SyteLine users. This happened pretty organically as well. So, we got our first customer, I think, in the SyteLine space about 10 years ago. And we worked with a close partner of ours to build out an integration that we'll chat about in a little bit. But as we've gone through the years and continued to be attendees and sponsors at Sun, we've noticed that all of the users within the SyteLine world had a huge need for AP automation specifically. As good of an ERP as SyteLine is for your exact needs on a day-to-day basis, there does seem to be some product pitfalls when it comes to the AP team, specifically around workflow and approvals and all of that jazz. So that's actually kind of what our tool addresses right off the bat. So it was a very organic fit, and we found ourselves working with a ton of SyteLine customers over the years. Now, in terms of volume, SyteLine users like yourselves can vary quite significantly in range of how many invoices that you'd be processing on an annual basis. I'd say a bulk of our customers are anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 invoices on a monthly basis. Excuse me, but we do have a good deal that are less than that. And we have a good deal of customers that are significantly more than that. I only call that out because obviously there's a changing landscape every year within this industry. And if you're thinking about growth down the road or acquisitions your organization might be making, you don't really have to be too concerned with Nimbello being able to scale alongside your team and the growth that you're having. I think our largest customer is doing nearly 1.5 million invoices through Nimbello on an annual basis these days. So it's usually, far exceeds what most people need, but we're able to grow and scale with you as your organization may grow and scale. We're also completely full service, so we can handle all different types of invoice formats. We have two different real service offerings where we can, be what we would typically mention would be a managed service style approach. Think of it as white glove, where you're outsourcing kind of your whole AP team's work to Nimbello to process those invoices, and then your team would pick it up on the workflow side. Or we have what we would consider more of our self-service offering, where your team would actually be running that front end through the OCR and AI to actually digitize those invoices. So as I mentioned, we've been doing a ton of work within manufacturing, but SyteLine specifically. Here's a good deal of logos that we're working with on a day-to-day basis. I'd say about 80% of these are within the SyteLine space. You may notice a couple names here if you run into them or your regular Sun attendees. We work really closely with all of them, have great relationships, and it's built some great stories from all of these logos. Additionally, for any IT folk or any organizations, it's pretty standard, but obviously security is important for everyone. We are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant and work with a ton of folks within the GovCloud. So I should mention that Nimbello works flawlessly with on-prem solutions, cloud-based solutions, as well as GovCloud solutions. So that's not too big of an issue for us, but we're always happy to share that SOC 2 Type 2 report with you or dive deeper into any security requirements if that's a big need for your organization or you've struggled finding any solutions that can fit what those security requirements may be. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier about the Nimbello platform, but this is giving you a kind of visual of the modules that are included in the service that we'd be offering. So within the Nimbello AP software suite, what we're really doing here is we're collecting those invoices. As I mentioned earlier, we don't care about the file formats that they're coming in. We're going to digitize those invoices, so take away the manual data entry aspect of your day-to-day. We're going to process them and route them into our workflow solution, which Geraldine's going to show you shortly here, which is a huge, huge add-on for a lot of SyteLine users. that may be doing this fragmented or very manually today, whether it's shared Excel sheets, physically walking down hallways within the office and poking people and making sure they're staying on top of it. Our workflow solution handles all of this flawlessly for you. And something else that we'll chat about in a little bit is obviously the integration. So we have a built-out integration already that really, really helps expedite the implementation timeline. So that integration itself, we've deployed it for all of our SyteLine customers. It takes maybe 2 hours to get up and running, and the rest of your physical implementation timeline with Nimbello is spent actually configuring all of your rules within that workflow and making sure that we're automating everything that we physically can for you. We also handle payments. We're going to stick to the software, the AP software suite today. But if payments are important to you in the organization or it's been on the docket for a business initiative lately, it's something that we can handle for you and be happy to chat about as well. So the evolution of AP and automation within SyteLine specifically, I personally have been going to Sun for about the past 4 years, and I've noticed a lot of folks come and go when it comes to AP automation. My first year there, I know SourceDay, they're part of the Hall of Fame within Sun, but they had an AP product out there, and that has since been sunset. Some other folks, High Radius was there, they're back and really pushing a solution. Nimbello has been consistent the whole time. So we've been there as only an AP automation provider. And we've, as I mentioned earlier, found a really, really organic and nice fit within the SyteLine community, but we've remained constant throughout all these years within the SyteLine space and helping all of our customers with automating those processes. So when we think about the modern manufacturing complexity for AP, our product is really built specifically for this. You all have unique challenges to your own organization and your own team. But being in this business for almost 2 decades, specifically catered for AP automation, all of these challenges are things that we have encountered, I would say 99% of the time. It takes a lot to stump Geraldine and our team with something that we haven't seen before. But we really understand your day-to-day with the complexity and that you have within your finance team with regard to obviously manual data entry, approval processes, different types of metrics that are coming in mismatched on your invoices. You think to current day with tariffs being a big one for everyone, trying to figure out how to navigate those waters. These are all things that we have handled and built within our platform and have specifically addressed, which Geraldine will show you shortly here. Before we jump over there, I want to always hit on a few things. When I talk to finance leaders in the C-suite, I always like to ask specifically why AP automation is on their radar today. Of course, everyone is going to say who's not currently using automation, that manual data entry is very, very tedious for their team. It really slows things down. But I've found more often than not, when it comes to the finance leaders exploring a solution, their biggest need and risk, I'd say, they have internally and why they'd be exploring a solution is more often than not that they've had maybe someone leave their AP team and they've had turnover and they've maybe replaced that person. It may have taken a couple months and obviously it takes a few months to get them trained, but this ends up putting the entire team behind with invoices on a monthly basis. And as such, that floats up the ladder with regard to cash flow and visibility and just overall stress levels for the entire team. But I found that finance leaders really just want to protect their business with a solution in place where if there is turnover, if someone is retiring from a role that they've been in for a very long time, they're able to easily slot someone in to an automation tool where the entire train will just keep on trucking along. Additionally, when you're bringing someone on board, it's a lot more simplistic to get them up to speed with an automation tool that's specifically built for SyteLine and manufacturing than it is to potentially get them into the current processes internally, which may be more manual and high touch. So there's obviously some other factors involved. I'd say honestly, cutting costs is pretty low on the list. It's difficult to obviously assign an ROI to a solution like AP automation, although we do see pretty significant decreases in cost per invoice prices But we're also seeing that, without automation, we polled our customer base. One AP person can typically process anywhere from 800 to 1,200 invoices themselves manually. With Nimbello in place, that has 2 to 3x. So we're actually seeing someone on an AP team with Nimbello to be able to process well over 3,000 invoices per month annually. And now, if that's not your volume, and as I mentioned earlier, a lot of SyteLine customers are within a range of about 1,000 to 3,000 per month. What this also does is it not only protects the business, but it allows that AP team and the finance team in general to really focus on other strategies, whether it's problematic vendors, which we all have, dealing with those relationships, or maybe some type of payment initiative or campaign internally working with your banks. This should free up a significant amount of their day-to-day so that they're not just stuck manually entering all of this data into SyteLine and keying it in, but instead being able to focus on some other initiatives. This is an overview of Nimbello. I'm going to pass this over to Geraldine to give you a brief synopsis before we jump on over into the demo.
Yeah, hi everyone. So as an idea of how the process works through Nimbello, and I'll definitely get into more detail than what's on this slide, but this is just kind of an overview. The process starts with collecting and digitizing the invoices. So we can receive electronic invoices, which is indicated by that EDI XML. That can be EDI, XML, CXML, a manual entry using vendor portal, lots of different ways that vendors can submit directly and bypass OCR and AI. And then if the invoices are coming in via email, we have OCR capability. We do have AI capability as well to help manage various things from the invoice capture, making sure that items match out, all of those different things. And then that goes through a data verification. In all instances, regardless of what methodology is being used, our goal is quality. We want to make sure that we're getting accuracy, we're getting quality, and that you are getting the best possible throughput that you absolutely can for your time, for your accuracy, for your quality, for your throughput, all of those different things. After it's collected and digitized, then it goes through a process. This is our proprietary process where we are going to go through various levels of validations, both on PO and non-PO, looking for duplicates, doing some automatic corrections where we can, doing pairing, doing matching, three-way matching, multiple POs on an invoice, doing all of that. And then the final step is once the process, there is a workflow, which is what I will show you, that will show you any exceptions that are outstanding. Once exceptions are handled or invoices are able to go through automatically, that is sent over to SyteLine with a integration that honestly takes just a couple hours to set up. We've set these up dozens and dozens of times throughout GovCloud, Cloud, on-prem, all the way back to SyteLine 8. So all of the versions you all mentioned in the comments, we've worked with every single one of those and have been able to integrate successfully with all of those options, again, with just a couple hours of integration needed for that. Okay, Charlie?
Perfect. Yeah. And on the integration front, so as I mentioned earlier and what Geraldine was just speaking about, we've worked directly with a close partner of ours in the space, and this came about with our first SyteLine customer some time back. But their lead developer over at the FAIC group actually built out an integration for us and that customer at the time. What we didn't know then is that they would be able to repurpose that integration moving forward for, as Geraldine mentioned, literally all versions of SyteLine. It will maybe take a little extra work, but I doubt any of you are on like SyteLine 6. But it could physically work. But the FAIC group and Nimbello have a great working relationship where they have put into place a repeatable integration. As I mentioned, we have deployed for all of our SyteLine users, whether you're on-prem or in the cloud or GovCloud, whatever it may be. And it has a fantastic proven track record where it's always working. It's very consistent. If you're cloud-based and Infor is pushing out any patches or updates that for some reason would interrupt this integration. Their team jumps on that immediately, makes sure that our users barely notice anything if it were to go down. But it's tried, true, tested. We've deployed it many, many a times. This is specific to the FAIC group, so not part of Nimbello. But as I mentioned, we've worked very closely with them through the years, and it works extremely well. And the big proponent here, or the big pro, I should say, is that this allows us to cut down on your physical implementation time with Nimbello to roughly 120 days. So we're basically spending no time, 0 days of the actual implementation, getting an integration in place. Our systems are going to just talk to each other right off the bat as soon as that's installed. Data will be pushing and pulling down from SyteLine into Nimbello. We'll set up your dev environments through the implementation, and it'll all be working flawlessly. This allows us, through that 120 days, to work physically with you and your team on setting up all of your rules and configurations within the Nimbello platform to try to mirror your current process or what your ideal process would look like, as well as training your staff, getting everyone up to speed with the platform that they'll be using, doing a lot of testing within the environments, making sure everything's working, matching up all of your fields within the OCR and AI system. We really have a laser focus on just working and teaching your team everything about Nimbello and the AP process with our tool, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every single time and getting an integration in place. I think we've all been through different types of implementations, and literally just getting the data to speak to, to flow back and forth and for systems to speak to each other can be a huge, huge portion of an actual implementation. For us, that's not even a factor. It's really just working with you and the team, making sure that everything's flowing seamlessly for you. So with that being said, we'll shift on over to Geraldine and actually walk you through the platform itself. But as you see things or anything pops up that you be curious about your own particular situation or instance, keep on dropping it in the chat, and we'll be happy to address any questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie. So I'm going to move over. I'm not going to go through our full demonstration because I want to make sure that we have time for questions. And if you guys have anything you specifically want a little bit more information about, I love interactive demos. Feel free to throw it in the chat. Sanjay and Charlie are monitoring that for me. So if something comes up, they can absolutely stop and ask those questions. I will be addressing the few that have come in so far for you. So starting off with, again, quality, security, accuracy, those are things that we very much pride ourselves on. And so we also know that AP is variable. AP is absolutely variable. It's variable by ERP, it's variable by company, it's variable by department. And so we know that in order to give you the best possible product that we absolutely can, we also have to be able to mix with those different types of environments. So we have set up our system to be very, very modular. You can choose components, you can choose to leave components out, and if absolutely necessary, if it's something that we just don't have available for some reason, we have various hooks and abilities to do additional things and customizations that may just be very, very specific for your industry or your company. That happens all the time. And so what I'm going to show you is the basic walkthrough, but know that even though I'm showing you the basics, there's much more depth than what we're actually going to go into today. And I'd love to set up with you guys to go over more of those specifics. So starting off, we do have multiple options for being able to log into the system, starting off with options. We do have the ability to do single sign-on, and we also have the ability to work with not just a single ERP, we can work with multiple ERPs, but we can also work with your SyteLine instance, whether you are a single site, multi-site, whether you have a corporate vendor master and GL master that pushes down to all the locations, or all the locations handle their own data. We can work with all of those variations. It's part of our setup. We know what to ask for, we know what to look for, and we give you the recommendations based on what would work best with that particular setup. So when you log in, what AP is going to see is you're going to see the My Tasks page. This is going to be your landing area. This is also going to be your end user landing area. All users can log into the workflow, whether they are buyers, approvers, purchasing, auditing, managers who just need to run reports. All of them are available to log into the site. We do not charge by seat, so your number of users is not going to affect your licensing. When they log in, everybody lands here, but what they're going to see is going to be a little bit different. From an AP perspective, you're going to see on the left-hand side here, all invoices that have an exception. So if it is a PO invoice that has a pricing hold, doesn't have receipts available, has an additional charge you want to review. If it's a multi-PO single invoice, we track those for you as well, so we can handle that. I spoke with a SyteLine client yesterday. 30% of their invoices are multi-PO invoices. So definitely an item that can come up and can be really painful if you don't have a way of tracking that. We also have non-purchase order invoices. So they can come in, they can go through an approval process, geocode, send to SyteLine. We also have a verification status where invoices that come in from any manner, any electronic, OCR, AI, doesn't matter, they're going to go through a pre-validation check. That pre-validation is going to check for, is there an active vendor on this invoice? Is the invoice number consistent with the other invoice numbers for that particular vendor? Is it a potential duplicate? Is there a math error somewhere? Something that would prevent the invoice from going through the rest of the process accurately and being paid appropriately. That is going to be your verification status here. When invoices pass the holds or they're able to automatically pass through without needing to be reviewed, they're going to go to the right-hand side here. This is what's going to go out to SyteLine. So you have invoices that are ready to export. Those are going to go to SyteLine at the scheduled basis. We can send invoices to SyteLine as frequently as you want us to. If you want that every hour, that's perfectly fine. We'll send you the approved invoices every hour. Those are going to go through an AP review queue that is going to do some checks and balances. These checks and balances are going to look for audit points. Did somebody try to bypass the workflow and send it through without non-PO approval? Did it try to bypass the workflow and go out without a valid PO or other data? We also do checks of the data itself. So SyteLine is very specific. Your part number on your PO has to be the part number that comes in on the invoice. So we know the vendor's not going to do that 100% of the time. So we're going to update that for you before we ever send it to SyteLine to make sure that is not a reason that it's going to fail. Everything that goes to SyteLine is going to get a confirmation. That data file is going to go via FTP to our FTP site or yours if you want it to go to yours. It will be automatically picked up on a scheduler and will be imported into SyteLine automatically. When it goes into SyteLine, it's going to go into the posting page. Within the posting page, you have the ability to edit your posting period or look at the data one last time before you voucher it the rest of the way through. If there is anything that cannot get to that posting page for any reason, we will get a file back that tells us that there was an error and what the SyteLine reason was why that invoice errored. We do a lot of checks and balances up front to make sure that that doesn't happen, but there are things that are outside of our purview that could potentially happen. And so we make sure that that's tracked. 100% of the invoices that come into the workflow, you will be able to track them all the way through what happened, when it happened, how it went, and when it went into SyteLine. Everything that passes into that posting page will go to the posted on our side, and you'll get the voucher number so you can look that up at any time. You also have internal and external communication. So if you want to utilize vendor portal, then you can communicate directly with the vendor through here, and that can be at an invoice level or at a vendor total level. And then we also do some various health checks. Your end users logging in, buyers, approvers. When they log in, they're primarily going to see this left-hand side, but they're going to have a very limited view. If you have a buyer that logs in, they're not going to see all 11 invoices that are sitting here. They are going to see just the few that are directed to them at the time that they log in. That way, it's what you would have emailed to them, maybe put through the SyteLine workflow, or you would have put it on their desk or called them about it, or however you tell them now. This is going to replace that. So you have one place, one communication, one tracking. When we go into the details, what you're going to see in here is you are going to see all of the items that are on hold. For AP, it doesn't matter who it's with, how long it's been there, or why it's on hold. You get to see it. You always know where everything is at all times. So you've got your vendor invoice, you've got your invoice date, you've got who it's currently directed to, you've got why it's on hold, receipts, bad PO, pricing, freight charges, more pricing, different reasons that the invoice can be on hold that you get to configure. You also get to configure, if it goes on one of those holds, who is responsible for it. So I can say that all pricing goes to the buyer who set up the purchase order. And so we can see that this pricing went to Norm and this pricing went to Cooper. It's their responsibilities. Generally once a day or more often if you want, when new invoices go to a user's queue, they will get an email notification letting them know that they have new items in their queue. You don't have to tell them. We're going to send them an email, say, hey, you have new items in your queue. If an item sits in their queue longer than the escalation period, which you get to choose how long that is, you can say that a PO invoice should have a resolution or be worked on within 5 days. If the invoice is still in that user's queue at the 5-day mark, they're going to get an escalation. That escalation is going to go to them and it will list all invoices at that 5-day mark, and it will list the invoice numbers, the vendors, and so forth. One email can also go out to a purchasing manager or whomever you decide it to go to that will list all invoices at the escalation period for all users. And so for PO invoices, that could be all POs that are at that 5-day mark. They will get one email, so they're not bombarded, that will list all invoices, who it's directed to, and why they're on hold. That way, again, AP does not need to go tracking down those users consistently. There's another set of eyes that is available that is going to see that information on a regular basis. Any place you see the view or view invoice image, you have your large image of the invoice that is always available. It does not matter how long the invoice is in the system or what status it's in. We maintain that image for at least 7 years for tax reporting purposes, and you always have access to it. If you use DocTrack or IDM, we have, through the FAIC integration, it is automatically available to integrate into either of those two systems. So if you would like to have that copy internally for any reason, you absolutely can. Or if you would just like it as a PDF periodically or at any point, they're your images, they're your property, we will send you those as you request them. When you go into the details, this is where the work is going to be done. So again, the top here is set up very much for ease of use for especially AP. You've got a thumbnail image of your invoice right up here that you can do quick side by side. You know, do I have the proper information at my header? Is it going to the right person? Do I need to check the total of the invoice? Any of those quick checks that you might need to do are very easy to do right here with the thumbnail. And of course, you have, again, the large image that is available if you so choose to use it. Your top is, again, your header information, including your vendor. You also have your button row up here, which includes the ability to edit your header information if you so want to, change between PO and non-PO. And you also have an ellipsis here that is secured that you could do things such as archive the invoice if it's not valid, Mark it as manual if it's already in SyteLine. Move it between locations if you need to, and other options in here that are not heavily used, but do come in handy. Your middle section is your comment history and your commenting. You are able to send an email, which is an immediate email to anybody in the workflow, and you can send it to multiple individuals at once if you so wish. This is immediate. As soon as you tell it to email, it will send whatever you have put into the comment history directly to the users that you have chosen to send the comment to. You also can add in standard comments that will pre-fill the invoice for you. So it will pre-fill the comment. You can edit it if you want to. You don't have to. You can send it as is, but you can set those up as you wish. The comment to does not change the user responsibility. In this case, the invoice is directed to Cooper and it is in his queue and it is his responsibility. Sending an email to anybody else does not change Cooper's responsibility. However, if I do want to change the responsibility, I can do so by doing the directed to, and I can change it from Cooper to Hank, and I can put it into Hank's responsibility. It could be because it needs escalated. It could be because Hank has additional information. Any reason that it needs to go to an additional person, you can send it to that additional person, as well as if I logged in as the buyer, if you want them to be able to do that ability, they can do that ability as well. Your comment history also does not go away. We do not delete your comment history, no matter how long the invoice is out here. So you can always see exactly when it came in, who it went to, what the holds were, updates that were made, when it exported. You always have that electronic audit trail for everything that has happened to the invoice. So you have the image and you have the comment trail. If you do want the comment trail to go with the invoice to either IDM or DocTrack, we can absolutely include that as well. So there is a print comment history that will add a page to the original invoice that will give you the full history. So if you want that in one place, you can have that all in one place, or we do always retain it regardless of sending it to another system. Your bottom section is your purchase order and receipt, and then your invoice data. We do handle multi-release in purchase orders. So if your purchase orders have more than one release on a particular line, we do handle that. We do handle if there's more than one receiver. You can invoice a partial receiver. You can invoice a partial purchase order. The only thing you can't do is you cannot over invoice a receipt. If an invoice is for more than your available receivers, it will go on hold. Otherwise, if the invoice is within your receiver count, then it'll be able to pass through. Your bottom section is also your invoice. So this is what would have come in electronically via OCR, via AI, however it came in. This is going to be that invoice data. Now, you'll see here that there's some information available, which includes the PO line numbers. I don't know, actually, I do know of one vendor ever that has sent the proper line number consistently, and that was a surprise to me. I've never seen any other vendor consistently send the proper PO line number on an invoice every time, and we don't rely on them to do so. What we do is we look at the invoice compared to the purchase order, and we start identifying which lines you are being billed for. We do that based on part number between the invoice and the purchase order. We do it based on unit price. We do it based on quantity billed to quantity received. And there's a variety of other ways that we can do it depending on what data you have available. If for some reason we cannot identify a line that you're being billed for, it will go on hold for somebody to identify which line you're actually being billed for. So that's step one, which is a huge critical step. Step two is, now that we know what you're billed, are you billed accurately? And that's where we're going to look at things like your unit price. Is your unit price between the invoice within tolerance of your unit price on the purchase order? If it is, we're going to pass that hold. If it is not, we're going to identify it. We're going to look at your receiving that's available. We're going to look at your extended amount, because if you're manufacturing especially, you can have a very, very high quantity with a little bit of unit price and a very big extended variance. We want to make sure that we capture those if that is what needs to be captured. We're also going to check for tax, freight, miscellaneous, tariffs, surcharges, all of those various things that you want to check for. We're going to check for those things. You can choose to put tolerances on anything that is price related. So if you want to have a 5% unit price tolerance that does not exceed $25, then that is what we will put in place. And the invoice line has to pass both the percent and the amount tolerance in order to pass through. If you want to have freight accepted, if it is no more than $100, then we'll accept freight if it's under $100. Otherwise, it will go on hold and you can choose who is responsible for approving that charge. Regardless of what the hold is, we're going to tell you exactly where the problem is. So in this particular case, we have PO line 3. We're going to tell you that only line 3 of the 11 invoice lines is an issue. It is for 8185, whereas the purchase order is 1637. There can be multiple reasons for this. It could be a unit of measure difference between the vendor, what the vendor is sending you and what the purchase order is for. It could be a true pricing variance. It could be that they billed you for the wrong part number. All of those different things, the same process that you go through right now to determine, is it just because the invoice needs to match up to the purchase order? Is it something the buyer needs to approve? Is it something we need to talk to the vendor about? Whatever it is the same process you will go through when it's done electronically. The only difference is you don't have to look for where the problem is and back invoices out of the system. We're going to tell you where the problem is before it ever goes to SyteLine. So it's not going to go to SyteLine while it has this problem unless you say that this problem is okay and you're going to accept it as is. Okay. And yes, Jessica, I just saw your comment. We can do tolerances based on a vendor for price and extended amount. Some vendors are very volatile on their pricing. And so you might have a larger tolerance for certain vendors and a smaller tolerance for other vendors. You can do that on a vendor by vendor basis. You can also do it by location. So if you're multi-locational, you can say that that vendor is okay for a tolerance at this location at this rate, but at this other location, it has a different rate. Duplicate invoices. Duplicate invoices are handled within the workflow so long as we have the original. The duplicate invoice, we first check for the same invoice and vendor number. If the invoice and vendor number match a record we already have in the workflow, then we're going to check to see if the PO, invoice date, and total are also the same. If all 5 points are the same, the invoice is going to be, the duplicate is going to be moved to the archive status. The archive does not delete the data. You still have access to it. You can still view it. You still get the image. It is just not in a processing queue. If the PO date or total are different, then it will go to that verification queue where you can look at it and decide, do you want to archive it? Is it a valid resubmission? What happened? And I think Sanjay has answered most of the other questions that are out here that I see. Okay. So outside of PO invoices, the other thing that we do is non-purchase order invoices. So non-purchase order invoices are set up via an approval queue. The approval queues can be done however you want. Again, it is very flexible. You have a type, which can be limited or ordered, and you can also restrict by your locations if you're multi-locational. A limited approval group has dollar amounts that are assigned, and these are absolutely configurable to whatever amounts you want. You are not stuck with a certain set. You can have it by every penny if you want. I do have one client that has over 26 approval levels. I have other clients that have 2 approval levels. So it is very configurable to however you are set up internally. We also have the ability to do an ordered group. And the difference between limited and ordered is that on a limited approval group, when an invoice comes in, it will always start with the first person. And if the invoice is within that person's dollar authority, they can final approve it. Otherwise, it will go to the next person. And if it's within the next person's dollar authority, they will final approve it. Otherwise, they will approve it and it will keep going up the chain until it gets to somebody who has enough dollar authority. In an ordered group, it is every person signs off. That could be one person, that could be 10 people, but everybody in the group has to sign off on it. So that is the difference between limited and ordered. Every single group that you set up, you get to choose which you would like to do. Do you want it to be an ordered group or a limited group? You can use them interchangeably. When non-purchase order invoices come in, we are first going to try and determine, and yes, we can set up approvals by vendor. The non-PO invoices, when they come in, they're going to get directed to an approval group. The approval group can be set by the vendor. It can be set on the invoice itself, a data field that's picked up during the either the integration or the OCR process. It can also be looked at for the last several invoices, the last 3 invoices that have come in for that vendor and for that vendor's location to which approval group they went through previously. And if all else fails, it can stop with AP and AP can decide where it needs to go from there. So there are options for directing the invoices. You also have the ability to auto GL code and auto approve vendors, either as a blanket or at certain dollar amounts. So for utility invoices, for example, you can set up a utility vendor that, let's say it's normally $100. You can say if it's between $95 and $105, I want it to GL code like this, and I want it to go straight to SyteLine. There's no reason for me to view it if it's in this dollar range. However, if it is under $95 or above $105, then I want to review it. And it's going to go to this approval group for me to review it. And so you have ability to further streamline your process where you want to, completely within your control, or allow for it to stop for review if it is outside of those parameters. When we go into the details, your header is going to be the same as what we saw on the PO side. And that is that you have your invoice image here on the right. There you go. Here on the right, you have your invoice image. You have all that information just like you did. You have your header information. You now have access to this approval group. So within this approval group, you can choose which group you want the invoice to go to. You also have the ability to do some group searches. So if you are unsure of the group or if it could go to multiple, you can do a lookup by usernames, by location, by group name, or you can look at everything and see everything that's outstanding or everything that are approval groups that are set up, and you can choose which one you want it to go to. Instead of having purchase order data, you are instead going to have geocoding data. In the previous coding section down here, this will show you the last 3, 4, 5 invoices for that vendor, the approval group they went to, the geocodes they are assigned to, and you can insert geocoding directly from this section. You have the ability to do manual geocoding with as many unit codes as you have available. So if you only use 1 unit code, or if you use all 4 unit codes, however you want to do that, that is set up to be able to handle that information. And we will follow the same available, not available, and restricted parameters that you have set up for your accounts to your unit codes. We also have the ability to do allocation codes. Allocations would take the total amount of the invoice and divide it, as we see here, amongst how many ever GLs you decide, and we'll divide it by percentage. This is great for when you have standard invoices that always go against the same GLs every time. Kind of saves you a little bit of time with the GL coding. Or I see this used a lot for things like freight invoices, where you have in freight and out freight and all different kinds of codes, but the amounts change every time. So we pre-populate all of the GLs for you, and then you can just edit for the amounts that you actually want to assign to each one and delete the ones you don't want. Again, saves a little bit of time hunting for exactly what you want. The approvals then are right here. Again, you have access to view your full image, and if it's within your approval authority, you can approve. If it's outside, you will final approve. If it's outside, you will approve. Your geocoding does have to match your total of your invoice. We will not let the invoice go forward if your geocoding does not match, because your geocoding is what's going to go to SyteLine for the approvals. In addition to that non-purchase order functionality, we are rolling out functionality that's getting announced this month for statement reconciliation. So you're getting a little preview of that announcement. Statement reconciliation, we can reconcile your statements automatically that are coming from the vendors to the invoices that are in our workflow. And you can notify the vendors that there are discrepancies that they might need to send, ask questions, any of those types of things. So that is also available on the workflow as well.
And Geraldine, we've got a couple questions. Thanks for this. This is great. Maybe we can answer some of them that we haven't. So, right, we talked about can we set tolerances on a vendor basis, which I think you cover, right? The tolerances on the vendor basis. You mentioned how we handle duplicate invoices.
Correct.
And then there have been a couple one additional one was, can you set approvals by vendor?
Yes, can set approvals by vendor.
And then a couple were the landed costs for the POs. How does it handle SyteLine landed costs for POs? A couple of people asked those.
Yep, landed costs for POs, that is a little bit more how SyteLine handles that on that side. For our side, we're going to look for the variances. We're going to look for the approvals. That particular question, I would actually send over to FAIC for how exactly that gets loaded into SyteLine for those landed costs. But for our side, if it's on a PO, we're looking to make sure that the amounts match up between the PO and the invoice, and that they're within the approval limits.
Gotcha. And Karina asked a question. Can Nimbello be used for multiple entities with non-centralized AP?
Absolutely. So on the login page where I had the drop down of the different options, if it's non-centralized, each location, each site that you have set up would have its own option there, and then they are completely configurable independently at that point as well. And Sean has a question. Do you have anything for trucking or freight invoices with no PO, but you'd have a freight estimate? Would this go through normal non-PO workflow? Yes, that would go through normal non-PO workflow. That's if the estimate is on a per invoice basis, then that is an item that you would want to send to an individual, and it can go to AP. AP can have access to do it. And we do have the ability to add additional documents. So if it is not something that you need approval for, if it is something that you have that estimate and the invoice is within the estimate, you can actually load that estimate directly with the invoice. So if anybody ever asks, well, why did you approve this? Why didn't it go through the normal chain? You have the information directly with the invoice that shows why it is that you did that. And Stephanie, when you were going to go to a centralized location and all entities roll up into one. Currently, we have to run reports out of multiple entities. That is true, Stephanie. We have some items that we are working on for some BI reports where if you are multi-locational, we can roll some of those reports together for you. So that's something we can discuss this afternoon when we have our call. Okay, and then Sean, I'm trying to auto match the estimate we get for the customer outbound freight to the invoice we get for it later. I don't have a way without it being on a PO for an auto match at the moment, but if that is something that you have a good volume for, that is really a trouble point for you, that is something that we can take offline if you want to talk about what options we have to help with that, or if there's something that we can do that is outside of our normal workflow to help with that, Sean. We got about 5 minutes left. I think I answered all of the questions, so I do want to hit real fast just on one report that's available. There's a lot in here, but one report that is available that I know everybody loves is the accrual report. So your month-end reporting becomes so much faster. This is going to be everything that's in the workflow that is not confirmed in the ERP, so everything that's not confirmed within SyteLine. Your non-POs are going to show you by GL code and by amount. Your POs are going to show if there's a receiver assigned, why it's on hold, who it's directed to, and that is by line item, and this is exportable to Excel. And with our February release that comes out on the 21st, we will also have a received not invoiced report available here as well, where it will give you all receivers we have in our workflow that do not have an invoice assigned to them. So you can get both your accrual and your R&I in one place if you need to. Okay. Charlie?
Awesome. Thanks, Geraldine. Hope that was helpful for everybody. So that is all we have today. I know we did some questions throughout the meeting here via the chat. But while we have a few minutes here, does anyone have any additional questions they'd like to ask? You know, feel free to come off of mute or you could drop them in the chat. We'll certainly stay on for a few minutes here. Feel free to, you know, obviously ask anything that you have, or you could depart. If you're going to be at Sun in a few weeks, we'll be there. Feel free to swing by the booths. Would love to meet you all in person. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful and look forward to chatting with you all shortly. Yes, Valerie, we will be sharing the webinar. Gerald and Sean asked a question.
Two for vendor. Yes, there is lots of vendor scorecard options. So we have reports available to show how long users are holding on to invoices. You can search that by hold status on the POs. You can search that also by vendor. So vendors that are sending errors, what errors are they sending? How long is it taking to be resolved? What invoices were they on? That's PO, non-PO, so forth. There is also some actual scorecards that are available that can give you a little bit more graphical side of things. And one of the things that I've actually been working with one of our SyteLine clients with, which is Preston Mac. I've been working with them the last several weeks. We have been looking at their scorecard and have taken their automatic pass-through rate in less than a month from 20% to over 50%. We looked at it today and one of the locations was at 54% and they're all over 40%. So we do look at those reports with you and we analyze why invoices are going on hold, what we can do on our side to help those not go on hold, and then if there's vendors that need to be targeted for change in behavior, process updates, so forth.
Perfect. And then Jessica asked, you mentioned received, not invoiced. Are there features add-ons for buyers specifically?
Not for buyers specifically. other than, just the ability to track their invoices, see what's going on, easily work with their vendors, especially utilizing vendor portal. Most of it is AP facing, depends on what you want to give them access to.
And then Karina asked, is it easy to view the details of previously approved invoices?
Absolutely. There is a search page that users have access to. Non-purchase order invoices, users are restricted to only invoices for approval groups that they have access to. You also have the ability to mark vendors as confidential. So even if they have access to the group, if they don't have access to confidential vendors, they would not have access to that vendor specifically. AP has some advanced search options as well.
Awesome. I think that's it. Anyone else have any other questions? I see some familiar faces here, though. Thank you for coming, everyone. All right. Well, it's 3 o'clock. I think that's it. Sure, plenty of people have more meetings, but thank you everyone for coming. Look forward to seeing you in a few weeks here, hopefully, and chatting more in person. Have a great rest of your day and a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone.